say to the Maulana to please tell me if my kids not doing the namaz and my husband are not doing the namaz, will I get azab in qabr? Uh, Even though I say to them every day, please do the namaz, and they don't listen to me. So what will happen after I go die and go in the qabr, and what will happen?
Okay, thank you very much, sister.
Yeah, I'll answer it very quickly. There are people who face such situations where sometimes their husbands aren't praying or their children aren't praying, and their duty is to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. You can't come and force someone. You can't literally pick someone up and throw him on the ground and force him to prostrate. But what you can do is provide them with, examples of those people who they revere from Islamic history and the way they protected their prayers. People like Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. On the 10th of Muharram, you find many who cry for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, but not many who necessarily protect the salah which he stood for and his companions stood for on the 10th of Muharram. So try and provide them with examples of people who they revere. Try and also get Maulanas or scholars to have a word with them. Try and speak with the mosque to focus more lectures on the topic. And at the end of the day, every human being has been given free will. As long as you provided the advice and the guidance and the reminder, then there wouldn't be that punishment. It's when you're silent and you watch what's being done is wrong and you don't say anything about it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not necessarily look down at you with the greatest of mercy.
I want to go back now to Ma'mun and his relationship with Imam Reza. And before, previously, we were discussing that he Imam Reza did the rain prayer and brought rain into the people who were suffering a famine at that time. And this was something which frustrated Ma'mun even more. He brought the scholars from the various religions, the Jews, the Christians, the Zoroastrian religions, to try to disprove Imam Reza. That failed. So then we get to a point where Ma'mun feels like he has nothing to lose anymore. And so is he actually the one who kills Imam Reza or orders his killing?
Yeah, well, he's definitely the one behind the killing of Imam Ali ibn Musa Reza alayhi salam. They had gone with the intention of fighting in the land of Iraq the other members of the Abbasids who they felt were a threat to them. But he recognized that there was a certain sense of deception in some people who he trusted. And he returned back, and it was only a few nights after he returned back, in the year 203 after Hijrah, maximum year 204 after Hijrah, that he ordered the assassination of the Imam.
And in fact, I want to tie this into a previous caller. We promised that we would answer the question about the death of Ma'mun.
Yes.
Do we have a caller? No. Okay. I'm going to come back to another question. What was the relationship of the Imam like with his father, Imam al-Kadhim? Because obviously, as you mentioned, Imam al-Kadhim was an Imam who spent a lot of time in jail and was obviously the most oppressed and tortured of the Imams in terms of, imprisonment by Harun al-Rashid. So what was the, how close was his relationship with his father?
Yes, Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam acted really as an exemplar to Imam Ali ibn Musa Reza alayhi salam, because the patience which Imam Ali ibn Musa Reza had to observe in his life, he took from seeing the patience his dad observed. Because you've got to imagine, you're living in Medina, all of a sudden you leave Medina, you leave your wife and your young son alone in Medina to go towards Tus. And it's hard enough that when you're alive they're not with you. And then you know that they're in a city far away. This lesson he had learned from Imam Musa ibn Ja'far. He had seen Imam Musa ibn Ja'far's patience in the prisons of Harun al-Rashid. To the extent that one hadith narrates Imam Musa ibn Ja'far in his last days in the prisons of Harun al-Rashid could not tell if it was day or night. They had put him in a cell of darkness. And Imam Ali ibn Musa Reza alayhi salam, this had been a lesson for him. That I saw my father transferred from one prison to the other, yet never complained to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the contrary, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam, the first time he went into prison, he said, Ya Allah, all my life I have asked you to allow me to worship you alone, to allow me to worship you in an area where I am alone. I thank you for this honor. Imagine the effect on Imam Ali ibn Musa Reza alayhi salam, that he sees his father with this particular passion and love as well as patience. And if ever there was a lesson you can take from Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam, it was the patience that he observed. So when Imam Ali ibn Musa then had to leave the city for the sake of the religion of Islam and travel so far to become the heir apparent, it was that attribute that looked after him and was important for him when he reached there.
So where was Imam Reza alayhi salam when his father had passed away?
No, Imam Reza alayhi salam was within the vicinity of his father.
He had to leave the salah.
Yeah. But you find with Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, he was he was away from his father. But of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows the Imams of Ahlul Bayt to be present to bury their fathers.
And we will come back to that in discussing, and you touched upon it just then, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. And obviously who is the son of Imam Reza and who is the Imam after him. And so what was their relationship like? Because obviously, as you said, Imam Reza being in isolation all the way in Medina, in Khurasan. Firstly, what was the circumstances around the birth of Imam al-Jawad? And then we'll come back to the burial, inshallah, of Imam Reza alayhi salam.
Yeah, well, what you find is that Imam al-Jawad, obviously being at a distance from Imam Ali ibn Musa alayhi salam, and Imam al-Jawad is one of the youngest Imams of Ahlul Bayt. That he was an Imam according to certain narrations, where you find that he was 8-9 years of age. And his mother was called Khayzaran, and once again she was of African origin. And once again you find another of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt who isn't necessarily marrying someone from where you'd expect them to marry. So they don't marry from Medina or Mecca, they're marrying someone again of African origin, and someone who had been revered in many of the traditions of Ahlul Bayt as being a lady of knowledge and a lady of piety as well. But of course it's difficult for the Imam, for him being so far away from his son, and that's why there's a lovely tradition about Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. When they asked him, how did you know that Imam Ali ibn Musa alayhi salam passed away? If he's so far away from you, how did you know that he passed away? He said, there was a sudden increase in certainty in my heart. I knew my father had passed away. It's as if when one Imam passes away and another takes on the mantle, that closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a sudden increase that occurs. And that is what had happened.
So he becomes the Imam, so obviously he has that,
exactly.
that natural feeling. Do we have a live caller? Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Brother, can you hear me properly?
Yes, we can, yes.
Yes, brother, first of all, I'd like to welcome Sayyid Ammar on this TV channel. And then second, the question that I have is about Imam Reza alayhi salam life, that in that time when there was a lot of things they were happening in Islam, and a lot of people trying to say that they are from the real sect of Islam, and how Imam Reza alayhi salam preached, the technique that Imam Reza alayhi salam followed, that we can see Shia at this stage, and what were the noble ways which we can follow, and we can follow Imam Reza alayhi salam.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure how clear the line was there, but I think the brother's question was dealing with different groups within Islam who all claim to be the right group. Everyone claims to be the right group, and I believe, I'm not sure, his question was, how would Imam Reza deal with the different groups in his time?
Well, there's a general principle which is said by the Holy Quran, and the Quran states, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. Invite towards the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with what? With wisdom and a kind word, and with that which is better. And in the time of Imam Ali ibn Musa alayhi salam, Imam Ali ibn Musa, remember, he is revered not only in the school of Ahlul Bayt. And there are other schools in Islam which call him al-Mujaddad, the reformer. That he is seen as the reviver, let's say, the reviver of the sciences of the religion of Islam. That the Imams after him would all be called Ibn al-Rida, Ibn al-Rida, Ibn al-Rida. Imagine that accolade and that mantle and that pedestal that's been, set, that whenever people refer to any of the sons, they're like, oh, he's the son of al-Rida. Even if he's the grandson or the great-grandson, but he's Ibn al-Rida. And you find contemporaries like Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who was alive during that period, who would say there is no jurisprudent alive and no master of theology like Imam Ali ibn Musa alayhi salam. You find Imam Ali ibn Musa with some of the Muslims who came to ask him questions, or some who even tried to come and debate him. He would always come back to them with morals of respect and of humility. Today, unfortunately, we have Muslims who can't even sit down and discuss with each other. Muslims who don't even go to each other's mosques. Muslims who label each other as disbelievers. You know, there are some Muslims, if you ask them, what do you know about this group? They'll say to you, listen, I heard that they're this and they're this and they're this. They won't go to their mosque, they won't go to learn from them, they won't go and sit with them. Whereas in the days of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and people like Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik, and then after that Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, and after that Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, and people like Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, you had an openness for discussion. All these scholars would sit together. There was, for example, a discussion Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam had with one Muslim who said that Prophet Dawood alayhi salam committed adultery with the wife of his general. So Imam said, what do you mean? He said, well, you know, we have the Quran, it talks of Prophet Dawood having many wives, and you know, we believe that Prophet Dawood committed adultery with the wife of his general. He sent the general to war so that he gets killed, and then he sleeps with the wife. So the Imam looked at him and he said, how could you say such a thing? As in, a prophet of Allah is someone who's infallible. So he said, oh Imam, tell me then, what's the explanation? Have I been misguided? He said the explanation is that in those days, a widow, nobody would marry her. It was a cultural taboo to marry a widow. So Imam said that Prophet Dawood broke that taboo by marrying the wife of his general who had been killed. Not that he sent the general to war and then committed adultery with the wife. That may be a biblical belief, but it's not an Islamic belief. You find, for example, some Muslims who may have come to the Imam at the time and said, we believe in a God who sits on a throne. And the Imam replies back to them by saying, well, the throne should be worshipped and not God. Because if the throne has the power to carry God, then shouldn't you really be worshipping the throne? You had other Muslims who may have come at the time and said, all our actions are predestined by God. So if we end up being bad to someone, it's God who'd made us bad. And the Imam would reply back to them with verses of the Quran. So Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida set a precedent for us that as Muslims, we shouldn't be discussing with each other with arrogance or with rudeness. But we discuss with each other with open-mindedness, where we agree to agree or we agree to disagree. And we also discuss with each other in a way where we bring forward our proofs. We learn from each other. That was his legacy, and that's why even the Christian priests, when they come and sit with Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam, one Christian priest came to Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam, said to him, who do you believe is greater, Jesus or Muhammad? Sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. So the Imam said, well, we revere Prophet Jesus alayhi salam, but we believe the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi is greater. So he said to him, what do you mean? He said, well, we believe the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi prayed more and fasted more than the Prophet Jesus. So the Christian became angered. He said, how dare you say someone prayed more than the Prophet Jesus alayhi salam? To which Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam replied back by saying, if you say the Prophet Jesus prayed more than the Prophet Muhammad, can you tell me who he was praying to if you claim that he is the Lord? You know, you're saying the Prophet Jesus alayhi salam is God, then who's he praying to? You know? So you find that that Christian didn't walk away feeling he was rudely treated, but rather saw a different angle. And that's something we have to take into our lives today.
Excellent. I want to discuss the importance of the Muharram Majalis and the like, but inshallah, I don't know if we want to discuss this now or after this next caller. So inshallah we'll answer this call, and then we'll definitely